Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the board and specifically Alan's team for putting this together. I think this is an historic event and we are certainly happy and proud to be part of it. I've prepared a slide presentation and I'm not going to go into specific screens. I'd rather just highlight some of the items that are relevant. You will see that it's not a full presentation of all the abilities and capabilities of the software. There's simply too many to handle in 40 minutes. I'll start off immediately by discussing the tariff maintenance, which is the main bearing of an invoicing system or a charging system in any office. We've classified our charge codes to belong to a reporting group, and we can draw extensive Excel reports indicating to you trends and so on in the thing. We have open-ended descriptions. What this means is that you can, while you're making the invoice, type a new description in. So you don't have to go and do tariff maintenance if you want to do that. An important aspect here is that our tariffs are linked with an effective date, which means that if we get a price update from the Department of Justice, we can type the new prices in ahead of time and make sure that it's 100% correct before the effective date comes up. Also then, if you make a correction on a return based on an historic date, it will charge correctly and not charge the new tariffs. This is important also to note that we will be very accurate in the pricing. So as Andrew has just indicated, if you are not, you might end up being taxed, and that is what we don't want to do. For example, also, if you've received a document in the office before an effective date and did the service after the effective date of the new price, there will be two types of prices, the old and the new. And that is determined by either the service date or the registration date for each typical charge code. We have a sort option for your lists of charge codes, which make it much easier to do. An important aspect here is, of course, also that we have a single tariff list. We have one code for registration. We don't have two codes for registration or for small claims. We have one code, and each code can have multiple prices attached to it. Any of the invoicing routines in SOS is linked to a search, so you can find your charges very quickly and easily. A serious important point here is that to do the tariff maintenance is really a simple task to do. And we export that to Excel if you want, or a spreadsheet of sorts, so that you can work with it very clearly. An important aspect in SOS is the use of stacks, what we call it stacks, for a reason. It gives you an opportunity to build a list of codes that you want to charge as a standard item. For example, if you are sharing, or if you're making an invoice for the finalization of a movable auction, there's a whole host of things that people can forget and usually do when they make the invoice. What we're doing here is we're making sure that operators cannot forget to charge. And I've seen in offices that this happens more frequent than one would think, where people are not charging enough, or they simply forget to add all the items for a specific thing. As far as the stacks is concerned, there's no limit on the number of stacks that we can have. Also, the stacks are linked to the individual process codes. So when you print a registration slip, on the side there's a list of charges that will be charged, which makes the job easier for the deputy when he comes to filling in his charges on his registration slip. So okay. Now we get to invoicing. There's a whole bunch of items that I need and that I can discuss here. I'm just going to touch on a few. SOS is one stream of invoicing. Although there are different sources to invoice from, and I will go through those in detail. They all end up in the same accounting system and the same invoice sequence issue. They are not different sequences, it's the same. The creation of the invoice is really simple with the use of the stack feature. You call up the stack and it fills out the costs, simple as that, which makes it very, very accurate and very simple to use. And of course, importantly, very quick to use. Now, the return invoicing is of course linked to the return and will be printed on the return. Also, when we send our invoice or our return via SheriffNet, it will have the proper information on it. An important aspect that I need to highlight is that we can add invoices to a return and resend it so that it will make life easy for the attorney to go and find the case where he can allocate the costs to. It's very simple. The accounting system is an open item accounting system. Every invoice ends up in the attorney's account in proper sequence and properly controlled. There's a nice option for what we call a debit note or a sundry invoice. Again, it ends up in the account using the same invoicing sequence. If I make a sundry invoice, let's say that I forgot to charge bank charges, I can make a sundry invoice, it will end up on the return properly. Just a note here, an invoice is a serious event. It's a serious accounting event. You cannot undo an invoice. That's against the law. If you've made an invoice and you've issued a tax invoice number, you can only reverse it with a proper tax credit note, which is something that I've seen that people don't fully understand, but that is the way that it will use. Also, the tax, again, is applicable here. We know that, I must just mention here that in the trust system, when we put in pro forma costs, the stacks are used there as well. Again, making sure that all charges are levied properly. Next one, storage invoices. Again, same story. There's one sequence, streaming sequence of invoicing in the system. Our storage system works like this. Once an item is checked into the stores and floor space allocated to it, with the starting date of when it ended up in the store, SOS will calculate the storage and charge it automatically. I know that many offices that use the storage system will do this once a month typically. I also know of offices that does it twice a month. SOS keeps track of the invoices that has been made and will keep a history of those invoices and not double charge the storage. An important aspect here, as far as the storage is concerned, if a defendant comes and picks up his stuff from your store, you want to record very quickly to print an invoice for him and recover the costs immediately. Okay. Okay. The next invoice.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz, there is a question from Sheriff Mayerton.
Yes.
He would like to know, how do you go about extracting a trust trial balance from your system?
The trial balance for the trust trial balance.
Yes.
Okay, let me answer that right now. It's very simple. Our trust system creates a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet from every single transaction that has ever happened in the system. And from that, one of the items there is a trust creditors listing. That also takes your control accounts, items like auction VAT, items like fidelity interest, items like trust bank charges, which must be reversed into account. And at the bottom of the spreadsheet, it says, this is your trust balance. And that must, of course, balance to your bank account. I hope that answers Segi's question. Right. I'll carry on with this deputy cell phone invoicing. This is an application that we load onto the deputy cell phone. When this application runs, it will start recording the call in terms of time. We can allocate photos, we can allocate video recordings, and everything to the return. We download the return numbers into the deputy's cell phone before he goes out on calls. When the moment the call is recorded, it is sent back to the server in the office, and an automatic batch invoice system is initiated. So you'll find an instance where a deputy has handled a call from an attorney, and before the deputy gets back to the office, the invoice is already with the attorney. That makes them a bit wary to call for any old story at all. This is a serious piece of software that ensures that all telephone charges are charged properly. We have found in practice that the telephone cost recovery increases by a couple of 1,000% using this the deputy cell phone invoice system. The in-house inquiry invoicing. This means simply that when an inquiry is handled by an operator, we say TC, that's telephone charge. It brings up a little window and it starts clocking the time, gives the operator a chance to type little notes, like, for example, who called us and what's the reason for a call. The system will then, once I say save this, it will allow you to invoice it immediately, or you can save it for later invoicing or pass it on to a supervisor. Again, this is a source of income that has never been exploited in most of the offices. I've seen very fancy manual systems where people have little pieces of paper lying around, cases written down, and where they've used our sundry invoicing system to do this. This is completely automated, and you will again find a specific attorney calling and calling and calling on the same case. With this system, we make sure that he will call less because he gets an invoice 2 minutes after he made a call. Payment and cash offsetting. Let's talk about that. I'm not going to go into detail here. I'll just highlight a couple of very important aspects. SOS creates an offset history for everything that we are posting into an account. This makes it very simple to reverse it afterwards if a correction needs to be made. Importantly, we can also move an offset from one invoice to another one via the offset correction routine. Importantly, we also put notes to any invoice or any transaction on the account, or notes in general for the account. Just a little note here on deposits. We can have more than one deposit active at any time. Usually, our present users makes up 2 or 3 deposits, one for cash at the over-the-counter, and the other one for the debtors department that posts their checks, does their normal payments and so on. An important note here is that all the transactions are generated in SOS are automatically integrated by forms of a single journal that you can pass on to your auditor or your bookkeeper that will enable them to import that into a Pastel or any of the other well-known accounting packages. That's enough said on payment. As far as statements are concerned, we can reprint a statement from any date in the history, and it will look exactly like the one that went out originally. We have a facility for a demand statement. So let's say that you had a query from an attorney and you've corrected some entries using the offset correction. You can reprint the statement straight away. Now, all these statements can be mailed via SheriffNet, and also importantly, note that SOS attaches a spreadsheet of all transactions on the statement. The statement itself looks very smart. It's in PDF format. The spreadsheet is in CSV format for the attorney to open it in any software that he wants to use. Importantly, the next slide will be about credit control, but I have to mention it here. Our credit control allows us to send a specific letter to a specific type of credit flag. Andrew, you mentioned the credit flags. This is really important, and I'll get into that right now. So this serves the purpose of a demand letter as well if the guys are not paying. And of course, we have a free format text that's available, and that is linked to the aging. That's pretty much standard on any system. Okay. Account inquiry. When you go into an account inquiry, we want to make sure that the attorney is happy when he finishes the call with you. That's why we put in really serious search facilities, dates, return numbers, document numbers, amounts, references, everything, a month, when it was first and last printed on a statement. General notes, that is something that we use for our in-house purposes so that we can keep track of the debtor. If he's a bad payer or if someone calls, we type in the notes. Offset history, you have access to the offset history. So if an attorney calls you and say, I paid you 12,000 Rand, what did you offset with it? I can display that on the screen and immediately make a spreadsheet and send it to him, email it to him immediately. So that is something that is really good. Aging, of course, because it's an open item statement. Every time that we do something in the account, we age it online live. It's not a column that's aged at a month end. We have available so you can age it as and when the thing happens. I'm going to discuss credit control a bit. Our present users that have logged in at the moment and is watching this, the new credit codes will be part of our upgrade that's going out from, well, it started upgrading on the 24th. It will carry on through the early December as well. I must just mention these. There's a credit limit facility. We have a prepaid account. This is where we ask a guy to pay up front. And we have guys that we really bad payers. We say, pay us a deposit per document. And then we have this very, very smart feature here that says registration on hold. If you make an account, an RD account is blocked. That's it. I know that we must serve by law, serve the document, but it doesn't say that we have to give the guy his return. I know that creates a whole bunch of problems in the industry. I'm not going to discuss that now. Each office will do this exactly as they do. I must just mention here that credit codes D and RD requires the input of a deposit amount. So we can classify our processes, for example, a summons, 300 Rand, removal, 1,200 Rand, that type of thing, and ask that deposit before we start even with the registration or the serving process. Importantly, also the registration slip, I float the thing over it, it says account blocked. So anyone in the office knows that this registration slip lying around the office is for an account that is blocked. Now, the same, what we have here for the registration process, you see what we've done here is we've moved the credit control to the point of origin. That is at registration. We have a letter that will be sent out with each of the events that happen. So if I have an account that's an A, which is always okay, you will get a nice letter saying, okay, we're happy with you. But if he's an RD guy, we say, we're not happy with you. This is your account to date. This is your aging. We print it on the confirmation and send it to him via SheriffNet. Importantly, if return is blocked, we do not make a VAT invoice, which means that you don't pay VAT for money that you have not received yet. Very important. Yes, and the others are pretty obvious, these things that's on there. Reminder of a deposit request, you can do that at any time. You can send, if you have a real bad payer, and let's say he's got 10 cases sitting, you can send him a reminder, you haven't paid your deposit yet. And make sure that we keep decent track. Again, moving this credit control ahead so as not to make invoices and then try and control the receiving of the money after the event.
Mr. Dietz,
Yes.
Another question?
Yes.
It seems like we have since moved from letters of demand. We are now issuing section 129 letters. So yes. Is your letter of demand compatible with the requirement of Section 129.
100% true, Andrew. Thank you. Whoever asked that is a very valid question. Yes, it is. It's free format. It's open-ended. We can make we can even make it look exactly like a summons if we want. So it's really open-ended, and you can design your letter that goes along. And remember that this is linked to a specific credit code. So we can sort of do that very easily because of the open-endedness of the item. Right. So just a note on statement sending. We have an option where we can either print the statements or send them via SheriffNet only. Now, we know that we save a lot on postage and so on if we send the items via mail, via SheriffNet, and most of the offices that uses SOS does it like that. Yes, that's about my story. And any questions and anything? I think it's question time. Andrew, if anyone wants to ask questions furthermore. Before I allow questions or take questions, I would just repeat that we're doing the upgrade, the general upgrade from, well, it's running at the moment. We're upgrading offices as we speak. So that's it. That's my story. Any questions, please? Okay.
This one is, Mr. Dietz, what would you say is the uniqueness of your system?
It's unique because it's so stupid to use. Very simple to use. Honestly, very, very simple. I think our input routines are very intuitive. And the other thing is that we really attend to user requests. We have multiple examples when people request something and we do it immediately. Once we've done that, let's say that an office, I know Henny or Don yesterday requested that something small in the registration process. Good morning, Henny. And yes, it's already in the system. It forms part of the upgrade because we're upgrading him probably early next week. I'm not going to send it to him ahead of time. When we've done all the upgrades and all the requests from users, we integrate it into a general upgrade and then send that out like we're doing now. That happens probably on a frequent basis, maybe once a year or so. But in the meantime, when people request something, we do it straight away.
None in a moment. Mr. Dietz, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And I think everyone has learned a lot. And then, as you have said, your uniqueness, your system uniqueness is very unique. So, and hopefully also user friendly. I guess, ne?
Yes, right. We certainly believe we believe in the KISS principle, KISS, keep it stupid and simple, and keep it simple and stupid. And we've had great success with that approach previously and in future as well. That's the way that we'll do it. I would like to thank everyone that has listened to this, and specifically our SOS users. Thank you for taking the time out to join us this morning. And I wish you well. And you've seen some features here that you probably don't see in your system yet, but yes, it will be upgraded, as I mentioned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your presentations. Thanks.